And we're back on Fresh Waves. I'm your host, Bren Masson. We just had a nice conversation with Dawn Forsyth about health and nutrition. And again, we want to reiterate that these are, or most of those were Dawn's ideas and my ideas, and that we're not in any way recommending to people that they do something they don't feel comfortable with, and that you should always check with your health practitioner to make sure that what you're doing is right for you and your situation. So, now we're going to switch topics a little bit. Still on the topic of self-care, we're going to talk about the benefits of play. Now, I'm an expressive arts practitioner, and as an expressive arts practitioner, a large amount of what we do is based on play. And the power of play is profound. Play affects human beings in very, very, very positive ways. We learn a lot by playing. And one of the things that I think is fascinating is the fact that they've done studies with rats that show that when the rats are deprived of play from a very young age, they end up being depressed, anxious, socially maladjusted. They have all kinds of problems, and it's very interesting then to extrapolate from that the fact that in our society right now, we are taking play out of our school systems more and more, that we're reducing the amount of play, and that people are crying out for more school, more school, more school. And in fact, there's a great vein of study to say that we should be allowing more play and more free play. Free play is really important. It's not structured play. So right now we have people taking their kids to extracurricular activities. It's not just getting on the ice and learning to skate and skating around, doing whatever you feel you want to do and really embracing the flow of the ice and all the rest of that stuff. Nope, you're going to play a game of hockey. This is where the blue line is. This is the red line. This is what you're going to do. No, you're not going to do that. You're going to do this. This is how you play the game. Even if you take figure skating, this is how you do a turn. This is how, and we need instruction for sure on certain activities. But that creative free play is really missing from our world right now. Some of that stems from fear. We're afraid that if our kids go out into the world and do dangerous, quote unquote, things, that they might hurt themselves. And that's a fact. But there's a lot of aspects of life where you're going to hurt yourself. Hopefully not in a really severe, critical way. But, you know, in the 1960s and 50s, even the 70s, kids had a lot of free play. And that free, unstructured play was really good. And yes, things happen. Scraped knees, twisted ankles. That's going to happen in life in general anyway. So kids learn so much from play. They learn to cooperate with one another. They learn to invent things, create things. New ideas stem from play. Einstein said that play is the best research. How crazy is that?
That is crazy. Yeah. Wow.
Play is the best research. And when you think of that, big companies like Google, just to use them as an example, because people have heard about their crazy antics. The slide, for example, that goes from the second floor down to the cafeteria so grown-ups can actually slide downstairs. It's play. They know the importance of play. They have playrooms in the Google Swiss office. Playrooms. That's rooms of stuff. Just play stuff. Paper, markers, pens, paints, easels, boards where you can just throw paint at the wall. They have fabrics and textiles for texture and things like that. There's so many great things that are in these rooms, and people are encouraged to go in and play. And what that play does is it triggers growth. It triggers the brain to relax. So much creativity can come out of playing that way. And it increases productivity. If you're on a team that is trying to come up with strategies and so many things, whether it's advertising or just business in general, you are strategizing all the time. If you get caught on the hamster wheel of I have to do this, I have to do that, I've got 6 meetings today and this has to go and that, you can't think clearly. And if you get bogged down in the muck of all of the things that you have to do, you can get stuck. And in order to get unstuck, you need to play. We've been trained from very young ages that we work first, play second. Well, sometimes we need to play first in order to be able to work efficiently and effectively second. So we need to reverse that order. And for a lot of kids in school, the same thing holds true today. Children need to play freely. There are societies on Earth to this day, we may call them primitive societies, but in more primitive societies, studies have shown that they actually play freely for the majority of their day before they reach the age of 10 or 12, when a lot of instruction will come in. During their day, they're still getting instruction. There's still a way to make a fire. There's still efficient ways to hunt and do all the things that you need to do to sustain life. But to just have the ability to free play adds in more learning and self-learning and self-guidance. And it's a huge learning component. It also helps you to take care of yourself as you get older. And there's a big train of thought right now that a lot of our youth today haven't had the experience of self-teaching, of self-learning, learning from the inside out. And that's going to be a disservice for them in the future. I've chatted enough for the moment. We're going to take a little break and we'll continue our conversation about play when we get back. Take it away, Jay. And we're back on Fresh Waves. I'm your host, Bren Masson, and this hour of Fresh, we're talking about play. And I've got my co-host here, Mr. Jay Rumball, behind the microphone. Good morning, Jay.
Good morning, Bren.
Did you used to play? You and I grew up in basically you moved to Thornhill at one point, that area, didn't you?
That's right.
Right, and I grew up in Thornhill. And play was such an integral part of growing up. You're a little younger than me, so yours was on the decline. But I was still in the era when play was a fun thing to do. I remember we would go out after dinner, and the only stipulation was come home when the streetlights come on.
Right. No, I remember that rule too.
We were busy right up until the streetlights came on.
Exactly, yeah.
And I can remember so many times when the streetlights would come on and we would be shocked. What? They can't be gone already. And if you asked me what we had done, I couldn't tell you. We just played. We went and rode our bikes to goodness knows where. We went down into the ravine and sat beside trees and rolled around on the grass. We talked to our friends. We just played. And it was great. And there was so much to be learned from that play. Did you have the same sort of experience?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Like we'd have, structured, road hockey games, but we'd just go out and play and, make forts and, use our imagination. And
Yeah, now the forts are an interesting thing. Do you remember that the forts were never finished?
That's true.
You never got to a point where the fort was finished, because play is not about the end result. You're not playing to create something in particular. You're simply playing for the sake of playing. Now, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk actually says that in order for a brain to heal and in order for a brain to perform at its optimum, it must learn to create and play freely. Create and play freely. Those are key components of play. And isn't that interesting? Of mental health, I should say. And it's interesting. He does a lot of his work with people who have severe PTSD, ex-military guys and people who have severe mental disorders with PTSD. And they're dealing with triggers. They're dealing with all kinds of things that actually interfere with someone's life and quality of life. And he honestly says that in order to heal that brain, it needs to be able to create and play freely. I think that is so powerful, because it's not just to be able to create. It's not just to be able to play, but to play freely. I remember making those forts. They were never finished. And it's not like we were upset with the concept of not finishing. It was part of the process of the play.
It was
You'd knock
definitely.
out a wall and make a new wall, or that window's really small and then you'd make another one. And while you're learning those things, making a fort is great. Think of the learning that goes on in there. Construction. Working with somewhat dangerous tools, because nowadays a hammer and a nail is considered dangerous tools. And yes, there were some accidents. I've had a couple of black and blue thumbs myself from playing. But it's all a learning process, isn't it? And you're going to learn that lesson whether you're hanging a picture at the age of 30 or working with a hammer and nails at the age of 5. My son was working with nails and hammers when he was 2. He had amazing dexterity. He was working a screwdriver effectively at the age of 2.
Wow, that's amazing.
It was never done.
No.
He'd finish doing one and move on to the next. And sometimes he'd go backwards and unscrew what he had screwed in. All of that is play and all of that is learning. And when you think of making the fort, you learned about angles. You learned about support. You learned about which angles were better support. How to support a piece of wood. If you just stick it on the ground, it falls over. So maybe you lean it up against a tree. Now you've got a triangle happening and all those different things. Can you remember one fort in particular, Jason, that was just better than all the rest?
Well, we've made some forts inside, and then we've made some forts outside. So one of the things that I enjoyed was making forts inside. Like we'd take all the cushions off the couch, and then there'd be like a big mess in the family room, and so we'd make some pretty cool forts inside.
Inside forts are great in a country like Canada where you're staying inside in the wintertime and you have
like
lots
on a
of
day
time
like
to
today
play.
would be a good time to make a fort inside. Yeah,
and if you don't have the exact right snow. I remember once we had learned about Inuit people living in igloos, and we thought, oh, that's pretty cool. Let's make an igloo. Yeah. And we were at the cottage, and I'm not even going to tell you how old we were because we were old enough to know better. But here's where some creative play comes into practice. We cut blocks of snow because we were in Halliburton and it was really snowy. There was about 6 feet of snow, and we made an igloo. So we did have blocks of snow that most of them fell apart halfway through, so it ended up being more like a patted down snowman with no guts inside. But it was about 5 feet tall. And then we made a hole in the top, and the hole in the top was to let the smoke out. Are you seeing where this might be going? So we had a doorway, and the doorway wasn't like a traditional igloo that you would see in an Inuit village. It was more like we were too lazy to finish making the tunnel doorway, so we just had a regular doorway. And unfortunately, we decided to light a fire in our little igloo, and the wind picked up. And the wind picked up and blew the smoke in, but the hole wasn't big enough to get all the smoke out the top. And we had a very smoky fire going because, of course, as the fire burned, it's melting the snow on the ground. And yeah, anyway. So it was a really dumb experiment that I don't recommend anyone ever try unless you really know what you're doing. And we had to bust through the top of the igloo to let more smoke out. And we laughed our guts out. But that wasn't the end of it. That was the beginning of a new process. We built chairs inside that igloo. We modified the fire. We learned so much. And thank goodness nothing happened. We didn't die of smoke inhalation or anything like that. But we learned so much. Now all of a sudden we knew that no matter how lazy we were, there was a reason for that entrance looking the way it does in the pictures. We learned that a fire burning on top of wet snow, or it becomes wet as it burns, is probably a very smoky fire, and maybe we better do something underneath the fire to get it off the ground. We just, if you think about all the different things that you can learn from that kind of an experience, and again, I don't recommend it to anyone, but we did learn a lot. We learned a lot.
Oh, for sure.
And we would spend hours outside, summer and winter. Remember road hockey games, Jay?
Oh, those were so much fun, yeah.
We knew the rules of road hockey. Did they get bent in a road hockey game?
Oh, they did. Oh, for
Absolutely.
sure. Oh, yeah. Exactly.
Was there an opportunity for everyone to play?
Oh, for sure, yeah.
In a certain respect, there was. And there was no one age. Everyone playing wasn't 6. No. And everyone playing wasn't 10. We had kids that were 6, kids that were 14, all playing.
No.
I never really played street hockey so much. I played the odd time. I did commentary. I did play-by-play. When I was 7 and 8 years old, I was doing play-by-play at the side of the road.
Wow.
And if somebody made a really dumb move and I happened to really broadcast it, the odd puck was thrown at my head or a snowball, all in fun. Again, I don't recommend throwing snowballs at people's heads, but you know what I mean. There was that camaraderie and that play-built community. And when the World Health Organization states that there are 3 necessities of life, food, water, and shelter, and they've now changed it to 4, food, water, shelter, and connection. What a great way to be connected.
It sure is, yeah.
In my neighborhood in Thornhill, all of the children grew up together. There were some of the older kids that just were too old to play with us. We still knew who they were. And because we were all out on the street, they knew who we were. They would watch out for us little ones all the time. They weren't my brother or sister. They were people in our community who would just kind of say, you know what, guys, you probably shouldn't be digging that hole in your parents' front yard. Or no one's going to buy your mud pies,
Words of advice, yeah.
Yeah. And when it came right down to it, it wasn't actually selling the mud pies that was the best play. It was making them and coming up with all the creative decorations for your mud pies. That was the thing. That was the joy and the fun. It's the process, not the end product when it comes to play.
Very true.
We've got another song lined up and a wee break coming up. So, Jason, take it away. You're listening to Fresh Waves on Whistle FM. We're talking about the benefits of play.